So Lita Ford shows up, and Lita Ford, comes into the like the little staging area we got, and we start interviewing her on the air. Now, I was being a smartass, and I asked Lita Ford if I could take her out bowling. She turns to Dan and said, "Who is this asshole?"
Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters of That podcast. I'm your host, Brian. And today I actually welcome a special guest from up north in Massachusetts. It's our boy, Mike Baxendale. How you doing today, brother?
I'm good, Brian. How you doing?
Not too bad. Though this great weather always lets me sleep at a little bit here too. I set my alarm for one day, and then actually, I'm like 2 hours later after it already rang. So
Well, I don't know what time you're setting your alarm. I'm pretty sure it's a lot later than mine, but at least you woke. At least you woke up. That's the important part.
that's the good news. Yes, I am awake. So yeah. All right. But how you been recently? I guess what's new up in Massachusetts?
Not too much. Just got back to work from a week and a half on vacation because of the holidays, and party time is over with. And now it's back to the grindstone.
So they say, and I guess also school starts back up too this week, doesn't it?
Yeah, starts I believe tomorrow for everybody. So yeah.
Maybe more so your state. I don't know how it is down here in PA. That's where I hail from, Steel City. So, but if you did watch the Steeler game last night, boy, I don't know. That was too crazy.
Yeah, well, I lived in Wisconsin for 11 years, so I'm kind of a Green Bay fan. So now that you have Aaron Rodgers, I was like, I don't know, man. It's a little old to be playing quarterback. I'm older than him. The idea of putting myself in harm's way like that just doesn't seem like a plausible or intelligent thing to do. But I don't know. That's what he does.
Money talks, apparently. So, as the saying goes. So, but just to fill in the audience and actually just also kind of fill you in a little bit too about how I found you. First off, you can thank the Facebook gods for that whole deal. But it was I wanted to do a little bit something different because usually on my podcast, I tend to bring more musicians on and then some people who perhaps also work in the music studios, that sort of stuff there too. But I never really got the chance to interview other people who've done music podcasts, maybe a couple like here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to actually try something different for the year 2026. So I wanted to branch out and get to also know about your music podcast as you do. But it looks like you also got an impressive resume with radio, which I think on my email you said 31 years, but I guess it's been a little bit longer, and you also do drumming too.
It's been 31 years here in the station I'm at now in Springfield, Massachusetts, WAQY. I started here in 1995, but I actually have been in radio since 1986. 86, I believe. It was a long time ago. But through a series of moves, I started off working in Milwaukee, and when I went to school out there, stayed there for 11 years, went to Marquette University, started working at radio stations in town, eventually got transferred out here in 1995, and have been here ever since. And as far as drumming goes, that's something I picked up when I was 12, and Santa Claus brought me a kind of a cool little Slingerland Radio Star jazz set, which is I wound up like an idiot. I wound up selling that drum set to buy textbooks for college. I was out of money, and like a jackass, I sold this thing for $400. Still failed all those classes, but at least I bought the books. But that was letting go of that set was very, very hard, very, very hard to do, and regretted it for years.
Until recently, so yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of back in it, but I've always been kind of like a basement player. Play with a couple people here and there. Never got a band together per se. But I've sat in a couple of shows with friends of mine, and it's been fun. But basically just to playing for myself and to get my own aggressions out.
it's a good therapy session to say the least.
It really is.
Okay. But to get to elaborate everything else here too, just a little bit. But first of all, Mike, we always need a little introduction. Mike, I want to welcome you to my podcast here, mate. And the way it's going to work is I just want to ask you some questions. And looks like you got 3 sort of titles, if we want to say it that way, in terms of job titles. So
Sure.
We'll go through each one at a time here too. So let's go ahead and jump into the whole radio deal first. So
Okay.
you said started in Milwaukee. I guess what really was your motivation for getting into radio?
Probably a lack of appreciable skills in any other field, I would think. I actually started in stand-up for about 9 years, and at the same time was also working for a radio station while I was in school, while I was doing stand-up. And by the time I graduated, I was given a full-time job working overnights. And then within about a year and a half, at the age of 23, I got transitioned into doing morning drive. And if you've ever woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and then tried to do a comedy show at night, the two just don't meet halfway. So one of them had to go, and only one of them was offering health insurance and vacation time. So I stuck with radio and stayed in that position for a while. Got ceremoniously fired, which was a good business decision on their part. Literally went to a radio station that was across the street and down a block. And I've been working for that company literally ever since. So we're talking 1991, 92. And then eventually got transferred to Central Illinois. This is all doing, morning drive radio. And then coming here to Springfield in Massachusetts in 95. And I've been doing mornings ever since.
That's pretty cool. And I guess, did you say something crude on the radio, Mike? Was that what happened?
No, actually, the reason I got fired had nothing to do with anything I did on the air. The reason I got fired was primarily because no one was willing to listen to what I was doing on the air. So that was the primary. That was the primary. But in fairness, nobody was listening to the radio station at any part of the day. So it wasn't my fault. It was kind of like it was a reshuffling of people. And in fact, in the 5 years that I worked at that station, there were 20 different morning shows in 5 years. That's not an exaggeration. There were 20 different people working in the morning show in the course of just that short period of time.
So yeah, it's a saturated market, to say the least. So
saturated market, and in that particular case, a radio station with horrendous management and no resources. So, that was that. But then once I went to work for this company, Saga Communications, it was the difference between eating a Slim Jim and prime rib. Quite frankly, it was a much different experience, and I've been working for that company ever since.
That's cool, but I was actually going to ask more. So, I guess in terms of the radio wise, I guess were you more like the radio DJs, where like you maybe do a little talking segment and then you would play some tunes? Was that how it was, or was it more so just talk about this and that in terms of the morning?
Well, it started off where I was basically doing a music driven show when I first started. Then when I moved into mornings, it becomes more of a talk show format, and eventually grew into a format where we play almost literally hardly any music. But I mean, that's really how it started. I mean, I still do a music show once a week, just to kind of keep my my toe dipping in that water. I do a Sunday night show called Baxie's Musical Fun Bag, which is just an hour show of old alternative, new wave, occasional punk songs in there as well. But then I go back, the Monday morning, and it's a classic rock station. But for the most part, we play very, very little music during the morning show. It's just two guys just talking endlessly.
Yeah, but you also said you were in stand-up comedy, so I guess were you doing stuff like, I don't know if they have an improv like at Milwaukee or something, or was it more like your typical
there were a couple of pretty decent comedy clubs at the time. This would have gone back to like the 80s or so, where like the comedy boom was really going on. But Milwaukee geographically is also close to Chicago. It's not that far from Minneapolis. There's other places to go. Madison, Wisconsin's not far, and I got to do some regional stuff around the Great Lakes region. Opened up for some pretty prominent comedians, but never got to the point where I'm headlining rooms or anything like that. But I mean, I spent years writing comedy and just writing in general, and then performing it. But like I said, a decision eventually had to be made, and then I just kind of transitioned out of it. I tried to do it for to keep it going for a while, but it just, I mean, when you get home from a comedy club and it's midnight and you're kind of running on this major adrenaline rush, and then you have to wake up for 3 o'clock in the morning to be at a radio station by 4. A younger man could do that. Today, I couldn't do that, so I wouldn't do that.
So my picture, the alarm clock after coming back from those comedy skits, it was more like this. It's like, I live.
No, it's more like, what am I doing with my life? what have I decided for myself? So, anyway,
I should be more of a cave of wonders. Who disturbs my slumber? So,
right, or you get no slumber at all. That's it.
Probably 2 hours at most, but so.
Yeah, again, it's hard. It's hard to entertain people with a gross lack of sleep. So, but that's what wound up happening.
Yeah. Actually, you said you wrote a lot of your lines. I guess, did you try to memorize them? And I guess, what topics did you normally try to go for when you were trying to comedy?
Oh, well, I mean, you're talking a long time ago, but it was, it wasn't necessarily, news driven. I mean, I was getting to the point where I was starting to, I had written things down, tried to memorize stuff, but I would think I was probably about a year away from kind of shying away from that and doing more extemporaneous improvisational stuff, which is really where I had also done a lot of stuff too. I just hadn't put it all together yet. So I had done some improv comedy, which I really enjoyed more, and so I think I was probably a little bit a ways from being able to integrate both, but never got the chance to quite do it. Things just kind of got in the way before we had the chance.
I guess, what do you make a comedy these days? You think kind of running on fumes at this point, or you think they could still make it work?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I think for me right now, that muscle has kind of been spent in other ways. I mean, I've used a lot of that writing, the effort of writing in what I do now, and I'm able to use it in an extemporaneous improvisational way during the morning show. But as far as getting up on a stage, I think at this point I'm not really sure I'm ready to do that, and my hours certainly haven't changed to make that happen. So, we will see.
I guess one more thing with the comedy thing. At some point, would you consider maybe try to do it again? Just maybe feel a little nostalgia doing it again, or at this point,
I've done enough public speaking in the job that I do, where I kind of do it, but yet I kind of don't go. I don't. I don't know. I mean, I've been tempted, but not tempted enough to actually go through with it again. I think I'm like I said, the lifestyle of doing morning radio is not real complimentary to doing comedy. And in order to do comedy, it's like playing golf. You got to do it all the time to really get good, to get seasoned and everything else. So I think, at this point in my life, that's probably in the past, but the skills of writing and performing, they're just done at a different stage. In this case, it happens to be radio.
All right. Make sure to keep people laughing there, Mikey. So,
all right, I'll try.
All right. But get back into the radio, I guess. What really was the decision that caused you to move out to Springfield, Massachusetts, and then get into WAQY?
Well, so what happened was I was working in Illinois, in Springfield, Illinois, and I was partnered with a guy who has gone on to have a pretty successful career too. But for whatever reason, the company wanted to transfer me to a station that really needed even more help. I was going to be replacing a guy and working with a guy who had been established. This guy, John O'Brien, who had been there for years, and they put us together after his partner had left, and it was like almost like an immediate chemistry between the two of us, and within just a few months, we were starting to hit our stride. And then, the show just, kept getting better and better over time. And most morning shows don't really have more of a lifespan of 5 years tops. John O'Brien and I worked together for 27 years. So, I mean, we had a terrific run. And, unfortunately, he just passed away last year of melanoma. But he had been away from the station for a number of years before that. So my new partner, Steve Nagel, is a guy who had been our producer, and then our news guy, and now he's a full-time partner on the show. So it's the Baxendale show, and has been since almost 3 years now. So the decision to come to Springfield was a pretty easy one. My family lives in the eastern part of Massachusetts. Springfield is in Western Mass. My family is south of Boston, about 10 miles out of Providence, Rhode Island. So the idea of coming back was actually a pretty easy one. I was close to family, but not too close to family. So it wound up being a tremendous situation to come back to.
That's good to hear. And I guess, did you guys also cover the sports, hopefully with the Boston Bruins during your little tenure with WAQY?
The Bruins, the radio station covers the Patriots games, Celtics, Red Sox, the whole damn thing.
That's cool. I guess what were you making of the Tom Brady years? I guess when he was winning the Super Bowls.
Well, I mean, it's funny. When I was a kid, and Foxborough was 2 or 3 towns over from where I grew up. The Patriots were just god awful, just terrible, like an awful, like the worst possible football team imaginable. In fact, it was really kind of hard to find true fans of the Patriots back in the 70s. So when I went to school in Wisconsin, and the Green Bay Packers are we're not just a 17-week situation. Even when they're going 8-8 in a season, it's a 12-month proposition to be a Packer fan. So I became a fan of the Packers. So when I came back here in '95, and they were just a few years away from, going to the Super Bowl, and then the Brady years come, it was almost like the light switch went on throughout all of New England. Oh, this is what it's like to be a football fan. And then the light went on, and it's like, oh, this is what it's like to hog it all for ourselves for 2 decades. So when it went away, I think Patriots fans didn't know what to do with themselves. And, fortunately, this year's been a really great year with Drake May. But I mean, yeah, I think New Englanders got, pretty damn spoiled for a while.
Then after Brady had got to Tampa, he also took Gronk with him there too. It was almost like the William Dafoe and Platoon, but yeah, why? So
it's kind of like you break up with your girlfriend in high school, and that she winds up going out with a better guy than you, and, and you watch her getting married and blossom and having a happy life. That's what it kind of was for Patriots fans when Tom Brady and Gronk went to Tampa. It's how dare they get to enjoy him too when he's ours? He's all ours.
Hey, guy wanted to try to do a Gordie Howe situation. Probably wanted to retire when he was 50 or something.
Well, yeah. Well, and that probably wasn't the best thing for hockey or even the best thing for Gordie Howe, but he did it anyway.
Hey, he did what he wants. It was his insurance policy at that point. So, anyway. But love or hate him, Brady is the GOAT. So I'll give respect to you boys up there. So,
I'm sure everybody out here appreciates that. Appreciate the support.
Yep. But I guess, what do you rate the Patriots' chances of Super Bowl this year with Drake May?
Well, since I assume that this podcast will run in perpetuity forever. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I think as a number 2 seed, they look pretty damn good. And for all the people say, he had the easiest schedule. You know what? If you win 14 games in a season, it ain't because you got an easy schedule. It's because you're a damn fine football team. So I think there's a good chance they do pretty well. If they don't win this year, I don't think it's too far away when Drake May and Mike Vrabel bring another Lombardi Trophy back to Foxborough. But we'll see.
Eventually, not to see.
Yeah.
So, but good luck, troopers. We'll see what happens. So, so I guess still stick with the radio in this case. Did you guys ever change up the topics, or were you mainly just like focusing on a little bit of music and sports and anything else really they wanted on the script, to say the least?
No, actually, the show kind of ran very much without a script. It still does. No, we don't just talk about one one topic. I mean, we talk about all kinds of things. Everything from news and sports, entertainment. We talk about stories of our own lives. We do all of that. So it's and so I mean it's a pretty broad spectrum of topics, and that's probably for the best. I think the thing that we do the most, which I think is really very, very important, is we primarily talk about local stuff. Stuff that specifically matters to people in our area, in Western Mass, Northern Connecticut, where we're based. I think that's what made the morning show special when I was doing it with John O'Brien for all those years, and we had been competing against syndicated shows that didn't have that opportunity to focus on local content. So, in the end, a nationally syndicated show actually had a hard time competing against us because we were talking about stuff that people actually cared about in the area, as opposed to stuff that may have had like a national appeal that didn't really mean as much to people, locally. And that's really what I think is important about radio, that the locality, the localism is really just like a crucial element that unfortunately many radio stations no longer abide by, and it's a mistake.
Yeah, you definitely need what we could call the human element in this case. You need that sort of interaction there too.
You do.
And I guess, did you guys bring on mainly did you ever do like interviews with like musicians in like the local scene, or was it more like your well-known guys?
No, we did everybody. I mean, podcast aside, I've been doing interviews since for the last 40 years. And we've spoken to everybody. I mean, we've spoken to Rock and Roll Hall of Famers, to the amazing actors, comedians. I mean, the list is, when I think back on it, and I should probably try to write it down someday, because if you ask me, well, who you're, who, I'm like, let me think about that for a while. It's like I have to really kind of, go back and the file cabinet to figure out, hey, did we talk to that guy or not? But yeah, no, I've been doing it for years, and so yeah, we've talked to a lot of damn people.
I guess we're going to jump into the podcast a little bit here too, but let's see, Backstage musical podcast. So I guess, what was really the inspiration behind it that led you to do the podcast?
Well, so the podcasting part of the radio station began like 2010, when we started to like repurpose the audio of the morning show. And back then, a lot of radio stations were doing that. One of the things that we were doing that was a little unique way back then is that we incorporated a membership component to it, kind of before like a Patreon existed or anything like that. And we had members, and we had people who were paying to hear the show in podcast form, and that worked for a while. And then we decided, to kind of drop that. But as time went on, more and more people were listening to that podcast. People who may have missed something during the show, people who moved out of the area, whatever it was, the numbers were really pretty good. And I had been talking to people that I had known about, well, then how do you really make a go of this? And because people who are going to listen to the show on a podcast are primarily only going to be people who are local and people who are, like the most loyal members of your show. And that's fine. But how do you grow it? Well, to me, the idea was to do some sort of unique content. And so for a while I tried to think, well, what could I do a podcast on independently of the morning show? And then I had been working on the idea of doing Baxie's Musical Podcast for about a year or so. And in 2020, literally like 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, I started doing it. And I did my first couple of interviews and posted it, used the radio station's website and social media presence and the ability to get onto Apple Podcast and Spotify and YouTube and all that other stuff. And we use those platforms to push the show. And so since 2020, I've put a new episode up every week. And there've been a couple of reposts, but for the most part, that's a rarity when that happens. Usually it's like I'm out of town or on vacation. But I mean, it's been, I think right now I'm up to 325 episodes of it. And so it's been a lot of fun. And I try to get a different, the purpose is to get a different guest having something to do with music every single week. And I've been pretty proud of what I've been able to get so far.
I was sort of the same way, but not 2020, 2021 for me was my first one. And it was actually a friend of mine out of college.
Okay.
And, he's now a drummer, and actually he's part of this country group now. They actually showed up in the Orange Bowl a couple years ago,
wow.
actually. So yeah, he's
very
like
cool.
Orange. It started with drummers, then I started branching out into indie musicians.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've expanded the global presence, but we're still trying to at least get to that so-called promised land, if we want to say it that way, where it's at least
it's
a nice career.
It's kind of like anything else. I mean, everything's it's a process, and as long as you look at it as like, this is a more of a marathon rather than a sprint. Then I find that it's been easier to get guests the more I do it. Whereas like early on, it was like a real struggle. Like well, what am I going to do? How am I going to get all these guests? And then I thought, am I biting more than I can chew? And the more interviews that I did, and the better I got at a longer form interview, then all of a sudden, like publicists and musicians were feeling more comfortable reaching out to me, or returning phone calls or returning emails or whatever it was, and that made it a whole lot easier. But it took some time before it really started to come together for this podcast.
Same with me. I would say I'm maybe not in the same position as you, but we're slowly getting there. We got a nice presence at the moment.
That's good. Yeah. That's great.
But since you mentioned about COVID, I guess outside the music podcast, and I guess anything else, maybe career-wise, I don't know what you were doing then, but how bad was COVID for you personally and also family-wise?
I got COVID twice, and I dealt with it fairly well. Everybody was quarantined, but I was still going into the radio station every day. My wife is a teacher. She was teaching in our living room every day. And so I'd come home after work, after spending the day in the radio station, and we were all isolated at the time. We're all in different rooms. But I'd go home, and then I'd listen to like high school science being taught in my front living room. So I mean, it was a challenge, but I mean, we fared pretty well. I mean, I did lose some people that I know as a result of it. So you had to take it seriously at the time. But as restrictions lifted, it just became a little bit easier to do the job, and we could do it together and face to face and all in the same room again. That was a big plus for everybody. But as far as my experience with it, went. I got it the first time. I felt rotten, but not terrible. The second time, I felt worse, but not worthy of being hospitalized. Thank goodness. But no, we got through it. We got through it all right.
That's good to hear. And sorry for any losses that you lost along the way because of COVID, and I guess also for John too, because John O'Brien, I guess. Did you guys stay in touch up until he had passed?
Um, we had kind of lost touch for a little while, and I would say like right before he died, we reconnected again, and everything was we were on good standing with each other, and everything was fine. It became clear that he was his time was like towards the end. When he died in November, we do every year we do this major food drive in Springfield. This event called the Mayflower Marathon. It's one of the biggest food drives in New England, where we filled six trailers with non-perishable food items. 50-foot trailers worth of food, and raised about 200. I think it was like $237,000 worth of food in cash for the Springfield Open Pantry, which is an emergency food pantry in Springfield. And John had died literally the night before we started. And so we went, and this is something we've been doing for 30 some odd years. So John was very much a part of this for years and years. And we knew about it early on. We didn't mention it until we got confirmation from his family that it was okay to talk about it. They agreed that it was okay to mention it, to announce it, and we did. And I mean, people just came out in droves. I mean, it's really an iconic figure in Springfield, and thankfully, we were able to kind of get back together and be on a friendly basis. But yeah, it was a really hard loss for the whole community, and but unfortunately, the Mayflower Marathon with food insecurity was a very necessary event, especially this year. But people were donating money and cash in John's name. So it was really something very, very special.
That's a good thing you're all doing out there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey John.
Yeah.
Hey John, rest in peace.
Well, thank you. We're all real proud of the event, and John's participation over the years was significant and very crucial too. So,
all right, keep doing what you're doing out there, boys. Make us proud. So
happy to do it.
Yep. I guess when you were getting into radio, did you look up to anyone in particular? Maybe something that had like a nice catchphrase or something in order to have that sort of personality behind the mic?
I don't know if there's any phrase per se. I worked with I had a couple of really great mentors along the way. I think the first one would have been my first morning show partner, this guy named Dan Hansen. He was my first partner. I was 23, he was 43. So it's kind of like going to work with your dad in a lot of ways. But he's maybe like one of the most talented people that I ever worked with, and love the guy to pieces. Whenever I get back to Milwaukee, I'm always sure to see Dan, and he's still kicking and doing good. He was one of my mentors. Another one would be this guy named Michael Harrison, who runs a publication. It's like a talk radio trade magazine. It's one of maybe the most important trade magazine in talk radio. Michael lives locally, and he and I become close friends over the years. And he's had a convention in New York every year, and I've been a participant in that for like the last 20 years. And I've learned a lot from a guy like that. This is a guy that invented something called AOR, which is album-oriented rock, and there were radio stations all across America that adopted that format for years. It was a wildly important format, and I mean, that guy's resume is enough to make your head spin, literally. And so, I've had a number of people in my career that kind of steered me and motivated me to do it and try to do it, the best way that I'm capable of doing it. But certainly there are people who are better. But these guys really kind of it took me under their wing and really helped.
Actually, we should have made the comparison to your one mentor was Qui-Gon Jinn. You were Obi-Wan Kenobi. Or something like that.
There's a little bit of that. Yeah, sure.
I mean, you saw Ewan McGregor. He had the clean shaven face back in 2001 right there in the Phantom Menace. So, I mean,
Right.
you could tell he was young. He was young. So.
He was young, of course. He was impetuous. What are you going to do?
I don't think so, yeah. That's cool. All right. So let's get into the drumming now. So let's see. You had a drummer, you had a drum set at around 12, and then at some point you had to sell it, which we'll consider sacrilege at this point. But
it was. And you know what? That set now, because Slingerland is making drums again. And they're beautiful drums. Beautiful, beautiful drums. And now they're like top shelf, top of the line, wickedly expensive drums. I could kick myself for selling that set. They'd be worth a fortune right now. But they had to go for $400 for textbooks. What a waste. So stupid.
And a class you failed too.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I don't want to learn too much too quick while I was in college. But yeah, that $400, I should have spent most of it on beer and pizza, but no, on education instead. So stupid.
Gotta do what you gotta do. But
yeah, right.
Regardless, what made you want to get back into drumming? And I guess what you got today in terms of the drum set?
A few years ago, as a Father's Day gift, I got it was a PDP, a Pacific, which is like a drum warehouse entry level bargain brand. And I built that up and bought more pieces. It's what started off as a 4-piece, wound up becoming a 7-piece, and then I was buying cymbals like a jackass. And then finally, I decided, and actually it was just this summer, and it was a great set, sounded really good. But this summer I was up in New Hampshire. We have a camp. We give a RV in New Hampshire. And I'm driving around one day, and the drum center of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, was like right down the street. I'm going, it says right there, it's the largest drum store in the world. I would love to go in there. So my wife is like, wait, do you want to get a new set? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of money. And she's like, oh, you can go ahead and take a look. So we went, and I found this great. It was a Tama's Star Classic, the red oyster shell finish, and it looked so damn cool. And it wasn't overly priced. It was priced right. It was on sale. And by showing my wife, she says, well, why don't you get that one? And I said, what that $35,000 Gretsch one? I'd like, no, I'm not doing that. But but this one is I brought home. It sounds absolutely amazing. I'm still trying to figure out the right setup for everything. But right now, that PDP set is sitting on the other side of my basement, just all stacked up and ready to go before I decide what the hell I want to do with it. But the one I'm playing now, I really like a lot. It's just a great looking set.
That sounds cool. The way you kind of described it, like Portsmouth, it was almost like the Jerusalem of the drum sets or something like that.
You know what? It's a beautiful shop. I mean, I don't know if it's the largest one in the world. It's the largest one that I've seen, and a lot of drummers buy from them, and they were totally cool. But it's like drummers, like guitar players, they go into a shop like that, and they look and they drool, and they try to imagine what it would be like to have enough money to buy all of these things, or buy like a top, the top shelf stuff. And like, oh man, I don't know. Like, I mean, I know that you play like an electronic kit, and I'm looking at like a couple of roll-in setups. I'm going, oh man, that would be really cool. And if we ever moved into like a condo, I could get that. And like, no, I'm not living in a condo yet. I'm gonna beat the living shit out of these things and piss off my neighbors for months. And that is where things go.
That's a good thing there too. So
yeah, right, absolutely.
Actually, it seems like everyone wants to try to have the Neil Peart sort of set there too, because of the chimes, all the little bells, and all that stuff going on right there
Yeah,
too.
but you know what? I mean, it like in so many things in life, Brian, bigger is not always better. And in spite of the idea of playing like the 7-piece set I had, I kind of like playing the smaller one. It's just in some ways it's just more manageable, and you're a young man, you'll understand this someday. uh Gather round while your Uncle Baxi gives you some advice. At some point your body can't move around a 7-piece set the way it can still move around like a 5 or a 4. Those are manageable, and I find that when I got back into playing. Well, before I sold them, when I was in high school, I was getting pretty decent, and then a large block of time passed when I wasn't playing at all, and so I got back on the drums. Said, "Oh, I'll be just as great as I was when I was 17, 18 years old," and I was like a rusted gate. I just needed to just dust off the cobwebs and kick it into gear. And it's what I found was there were certain things that I couldn't do when I could do when I was young, but I did them better because I found other ways of doing it. If that makes any sense. Just the limitations of age forced me to do things just more efficiently. Like there was like more of an economy of movement from one part to another, and it wound up being kind of cool to do it that way because I was I wasn't ever going to be Neil Peart, but at 17 I thought, well, if I didn't have to go to college and buy books, maybe I could.
They say if you play La Villa Stratiato, they say you could definitely consider yourself amongst Neil Peart's ranks.
Well,
So, yeah.
you know what? I tried multiple times, and that freaking song is an ass kicker. That you walk off that set in a flop sweat, and out of total fear. I tried doing it like a couple of years ago, and I got to halfway. I said, "Okay, we're done here. let's do something simple now."
I give up.
I give up. To hell with
give up.
this.
God love Neil Peart. So yeah, gotta love
I
Neil Peart.
know. I know. Me too. Me too. But you know what? It's funny because I mean, I find myself like on moments when I need to relax. There's almost like nothing better than turn on like a Drumeo video, or like watching like just drum solo videos, and not just rock guys. Like I'm finding now, like I'm watching a lot more like jazz players, like a Jojo Mayer or a Benny Greb, and watching these guys going, holy shit, these guys they're not playing like a Neil Peart, but they're almost every bit as good in their own way, and it's fascinating to watch. Like old Buddy Rich videos. They're just like, I mean, how is that even possible? There's like one video online where Buddy is playing, and allegedly he has a heart attack in the middle of this performance and keeps on playing. It's like, most people, when you have a heart attack, you say, I'm going to go call an ambulance, or I'm going to go lie down. Maybe I'll take a children's aspirin, and maybe that'll help. Buddy said, fuck it. I'm going to just keep playing. And if I die, I hope everybody enjoys the show. That was his, that was his attitude. He just kept on playing. It's like, if I got to lie down, I'm lying down.
I guess so. I guess too, you would have felt it too, because it wouldn't be like a real tight sort of chest sort of pain going on right there.
I would think that would throw off your syncopation at least a little bit.
You would think,
yeah.
Not Buddy Rich.
Even if your heart is beating in paradiddles and ratamucus, I'm sorry, I'm taking a break.
It's like, call a doctor. Can't you see I'm having a heart attack over here? So,
does somebody else want to play? I mean, when Keith Moon passed out on his drum kit, years ago, they found someone in the audience to fill up, to fill in his place. Buddy Rich has a heart attack. He keeps on going.
That's a difference right there. So yeah.
That's a guy who loves to play.
Absolutely.
That's a drummer right there.
I guess speaking in terms of drumming, I think you mentioned this earlier, but do you do like some sort of session work, or you just kind of goofing around with your buddies and just doing a couple bars here and there?
I don't do. I mean, I don't do any recording or anything like that. I mean, mostly what I do is I'll come home from a day at work and I'll play for like 45 minutes just to kind of get some aggression out. But there a couple times when been a couple local bands that wanted to wanted to have me play with them at a show, and I've done that a few probably good 15 20 times. Or we used to do a live show for the radio show years ago, and we had this guy Gary Hoey, who's a great guitar player. We had his band come into town to play a couple times. And before the show, he said, "Hey, you want to just jam for a little bit?" I'm like, "I'm going to jam with Gary Hoey." Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a guy that auditioned, for Ozzy's band and stuff. This guy's like a real. Gary Hoey is no slouch. Look him up. He's fantastic. But I played with Gary, and I was like, "Holy shit, that is so damn cool." But yeah, no, like I said, never to the point of where I've had a band and although it was like last summer, maybe even the summer before, I had a friend of mine who plays bass, and he says, "Hey, another friend of mine wants to get together, and they want to do a Van Halen, like a Van Halen set." I'm like, "Okay, I could probably do that." And they say, "Okay, we'll get you like a playlist." And I said, like 2 weeks later, they sent me a playlist. There's not a single Van Halen song on it. Instead, they got stuff like Ace of Spades from Motorhead. They got like a bunch of stuff that is I just I don't know who they think they're dealing with here, but I mean, I can't play a full set of Motorhead music without having the same kind of heart attack that Buddy Rich would have in the middle of a show. So we never really got that off the ground. But I mean, if it had been a Van Halen thing, I would have muscled through that a little bit. That would have been all right. That would have been fun.
Did I say it was a Van Roth or a Van Hagar sort of set list at the time?
They were not specific. I was ready to do a little bit of both, but I mean, I'm not gonna be doing blistering solos during in somebody's garage, just to for shits and giggles. I mean, I'll play, but damn it, I'm not putting my life on the line. I mean, I tried to play through the set list they gave me. I'm like, oh my god, this is killing me. This is killing me. It was too fast, too much. I think that's the definition of an old drummer. Oh, It's like going to a restaurant and complaining about the portions. I mean, that's what it that's what it felt like. It's too fast. It's too loud. It's too much. Can't do it.
That's how Lemmy liked it. He liked it loud. So,
And you know what? Lemmy died around my age, so let that sink in.
yeah. May he rest in peace there too. But
Yes.
I would say he almost get close to dying on stage because I think that's what he wanted to do.
Yes. He was definitely a lifer, that's for sure.
That's for sure. But this past year, we did lose a good amount of people, and I guess Ozzy Osbourne, chief among them there too. So,
Yep.
I guess outside of people you knew personally, I guess in terms of musician wise, I guess who do you remember kind of fondly, whether they like influenced you in a way or kind of like, damn, that guy's so awesome.
Well, I mean, I got a bunch of a bunch that I really that I really enjoyed. I mean, I think when I was in high school, I was kind of like a prog rock nerd a little bit. Had all the Yes and the Emerson, Lake and Palmers and all that shit. And then when I went to college, my music scope expanded exponentially. And I'm listening to more alternative. It was called college. I was in college radio at the time, and got to discover alternative and new wave and some punk too, and really kind of dictate that. I mean, I think, but at the same time, I've also been kind of a big fan of power pop too. So I think so. Like for now, like I think my all-time favorite band would be a band called XTC. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're a British band that was around in the '80s. There are two songwriters. The primary songwriter was this guy Andy Partridge, who is a freaking genius, and stopped playing live in 1982 Just had a nervous breakdown on stage after like a 12-year Valium addiction. That he quit cold turkey, which would normally kill most people. But his music, I mean, the musical gifts of his songwriting are astounding. That's a guy I absolutely love. Another band I love is a band called Jellyfish, another power pop band from the '90s. They put 2 albums out. The first one was called Belly Button. The second was called Spilt Milk, which is absolutely one of the most amazing freaking records I've ever heard in my life. And yet at the same time, also love Brian Wilson and Cheap Trick and Husker Du, and I mean my palette is pretty broad. It's I mean, I've been working at classic rock stations for 40 years, but yet I listen to me, that's my classic rock.
I guess, are a lot of those people still around these days, or do they pass on there too?
Well, I mean, a lot of them are at the age now where they're starting to, slowly disintegrate before our eyes. I mean, I've gotten the chance to interview or meet over the years a couple of people that have died that were like, oh, that one smarted a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I've been really fortunate in that way.
That's cool. And I guess, sort of as a fun question, was there an interview that was quote unquote interesting? Whether it was some guy that was maybe jacked up on drugs or something?
I've had a couple of them. Um, I, I wa- so this is a true story. Um, Lita Ford, Lita Ford. All right, so Lita Ford used to play with a band called the Runaways, and also had a solo career. Sang with Ozzy. When I Close My Eyes Forever was her big song, a duet with Ozzy. Well, excuse me. This goes back to Milwaukee. Every summer, Milwaukee has this huge music festival called Summerfest, and it's right on the shores of Lake Michigan. And it was at the time it was like 17 days, 10 stages, a million people there every summer. And Lita Ford was going to play, and at the time she was married to this guy from Wasp, the bass player from Wasp. And you may remember, I don't know if you ever saw the film The Decline of Western Civilization. Her ex-husband was the guy who was drinking vodka by the pool, actually in the pool, and his mom was handing him bottles of fresh vodka. She married that guy. Anyway, she's in Milwaukee one night, and she's out with my morning show partner Dan, who I mentioned earlier, and my boss, and like a record rep and whatever. That was pretty standard practice then in the '80s. Well, they had dinner, they went to a club, they had fun, they did whatever the hell they do. I mean, after all, you're married to the guy from Wasp, and at the end of the night, after everything is all said and done, my boss gets a phone call from Lita Ford and says, "My husband has just been taken into protective custody. I need someone to help me bail him out for the night." So they're out. They go, they bail him out, and the guy's name was Chris Hughes. They bring him back to his hotel. The following day, Dan and I were going to be broadcasting live from Summerfest, and we had sponsorship of a stage. We had this whole broadcast area, and Dan tells me, when I get there, Lita Ford is going to stop by. I said, "Oh, great, that's cool." He didn't tell me any of this stuff from the night before. He didn't tell me about her being married to the guy from Wasp. Didn't tell me about the protective custody. Didn't tell me about bailing the guy out. So Lita Ford shows up, and Lita Ford comes into the like the little staging area we got, and we start interviewing her on the air. Now, I was being a smartass, and I asked Lita Ford if I could take her out bowling, because what would be better than going bowling with Lita Ford? And she thought, she completely blew me off about this whole bowling thing. It's like she completely dismissed it. And I said, listen, I really want to take you bowling. I'll pay for the shoe rental. I'll pay for the frame. I'll buy a pitcher of beer. I'll even buy the shoe rental for your husband. I mean, I thought that was a very generous offer. So I persisted and just would not take no for an answer because, bowling in Wisconsin, I mean, they put your bowling average on your driver's license. I mean, that's how seriously they take bowling. Well, in the middle of this again, this is all live on the air. She turns to Dan and said, "Who is this asshole?" And so I thought, you know what? I got Lita Ford to call me an asshole live on the air. And I thought, that's going to be a story I will tell for the rest of my days. And I still think it's a great story. And so I had a chance to interview her years later. And we weren't able to make it happen. But I thought, okay, this is when it happens. And one day it will happen. I have to bring this up. Now, as it turns out, one of her good friends happens to be Gary Hoey, the guitar player who I played with. So Gary and I have talked a little bit about trying to get her on the podcast at some point where I have to bring this whole thing up, because to me it's like, oh, that's a hell of a story. So yeah, I'm proud of that one.
It's a good audio, good soldier. Jeez.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, I don't know. I think at the time I would feel offended, but then afterwards it'd be hilarious, to be honest.
At the time, I wasn't offended. I was like, "Oh my god, she just said I was an asshole." I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wear that with a badge of courage right there. I'll take that to my grave.
I guess so. So
yeah.
You still trying to work to get Lita Ford on the podcast?
I mean, I haven't been trying that hard at it because, frankly, I got things kind of booked up for a while. But I mean, it's yes, I would love to get Lita Ford on the podcast. Absolutely love it.
All right, we'll see what happens. That's a damn good story there too. I should tell the grandkids one of these days. So.
Yes, right. Kids, gather around.
Yep.
Listen to your grandpa tell a story about a woman you don't know.
Grandpa Baxendale about to tell the story right here. So.
That's right.
All right. Well, good job there, Mike. So,
Thank you.
Let's just do one more question right here then. I think afterwards I'll ask if you have any questions for me. But I guess in terms of gear, I think you might have already mentioned about the drum set. But if there's any gear that you missed for the drum set, go ahead and share. Otherwise, what kind of gear do you use for the radio?
For the radio, I mean, it's all kind of professional grade stuff. If you're asking me what kind of brands like soundboards and stuff like that, I'm probably not your guy. I mean, for the podcast, I have like a Yamaha soundboard and some decent mics and stuff like that, and some processors and everything. But as far as what we do on the radio, that's all stuff that's way above my understanding, and that's why we have professional engineers to maintain that stuff. But yeah, no, it's all fairly rudimentary type of stuff. But yeah, it's all digital now, whereas it used to be all analog and tapes and stuff like that.
Anytime I think of the analog stuff, it's almost like you can't screw this up. Otherwise, you have to delete and start all over again. Because that's kind of how it was with Rush. So yeah,
you can screw it up, and that's okay. But there is something that is, I think when you listen to like an analog recording and a digital recording, I think there is some difference. There's like a softness and more of a humanity to an analog recording than something that's been fiddled around with auto tune or just dropped and dragged on on any number of editing software programs. But I think there's something to be said about listening to Steely Dan's Asia and listening to the genius of that production as opposed to, I don't know, listening to a Taylor Swift album, which was all done by dropping and dragging and fiddling with whatever program she's using. But I mean, it's like there's something kind of nice about the old way of doing it too.
Actually, as soon as you said Asia, I was immediately thinking of the song "Bodice." If I think that's how you pronounce it, but I was actually off "Countdown to Ecstasy." So
Yeah, well, again, yeah, they only got better with Asia and Gaucho. Those things are like production masterpieces, really.
they still work wonders. So yeah.
But they do. Yep.
All right. That's all cool.
Yeah.
So I guess just real quick, since we're already in the year 2026, and it seems like you're booked for at least some of your Backseas musical podcasts, I guess should we count this as resolutions? Like, or maybe just maybe with the radio and podcast, I guess drumming wise, I guess what do you got in terms of resolutions for those three?
My resolution is to keep this podcast going. I got some great guests on the way. I'm working on a couple of guests that may happen. Keep my fingers crossed that just keep persisting and kind of enduring the slog of it all. But I mean, so far I've been pretty happy with just the way even the early part of the year is shaping up. So yeah, that's going to be my big resolution for 2026, to keep it going and growing it.
You think about do some drum covers at some point? Maybe just to go for some old timers.
Drumming is kind of like stand up in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm the best basement drummer in my house, and but getting out there and playing, as much as I love doing it, I'm not so sure how much I'm going to go out in the public and do it. I'm going to try to save people the indignity of having to listen to that.
All right, tell you what, how about video for the grandkids? Like, at least leave a little memory behind.
Right.
So,
well, I think I tried doing that in the early days of Facebook. I posted something on a Facebook video, and then I think I was like too self-critical. I recorded it, posted it, and said, I'm taking that shit down. It's like, no, I don't think that's representative of what I do. But then some people say, hey, that's really pretty good. I'm like, not good enough for me. I'm almost thinking like I'm like an oddly perfectionistic, but very limited in skill. If that makes sense.
Oh, it's almost like we have to do like
I know
Life of
I know my
Brian's,
limit.
yeah.
I know my limitations. Let's put it that way.
Have you heard about the name Biggest Dickus or something like that?
Does it amuse you to listen to something like that?
That'd be all they're just holding it in
Yeah, right.
the whole time. So, the life of Mike Baxendale in that case. So,
Yeah. So what about you? I mean, you I know you've been playing electronic set. What kind of E set do you have?
I've always stuck with Roland, and I forget what the very first one was. I think it was still Roland, but that one was more like your beginner set, just to make sure.
Yep.
My parents wanted to make sure it wasn't a fad at first. So when they realized it wasn't, they finally got me into a Roland TD25K, and now I've upgraded to a Roland VAD 706.
Oh, nice.
So I got two Chinas, two crashes, a ride, hi-hat, three toms, snare and a hi-hat, and one bass.
Nice. I've only played on one of them. There was a band that was playing at like doing like a restaurant gig. It was like a 3-piece, and the guy knew me from the radio station. You want to sit in? I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. I played it, and I really liked it, but it was like it was almost too quiet because it was a small space, but I really enjoyed playing it. Like, man, I might need to get one of these things one day. And then then I looked at what a Roland costs. Like, maybe next week. Maybe next month. It's a big commitment, but they're very, very cool.
They are. That's why at least looks more like your traditional set. But I went with the ruby red because there's either that or black. So.
Yeah. No, it looks cool. It looks like a lot of fun to play.
Oh yeah, I got a whole lot of drum covers lined up this year, so stay tuned.
Oh good. Oh good.
But I recently actually split my YouTube channel up because it used to be drum covers and podcast interviews were on the one channel. Now I just do the one channel's podcast interviews, the other one's drum covers, and I do another one just for, I call it shits and giggles really, because it's all my live footage that I take it from all the concerts I went to last year.
Yep.
So
that's fun. That's fun to do.
Oh yeah, and it's cool. Fun for the memory. It's one for the memories too. And I also have to make sure to get this 512 gigabyte flash drive here so I can store everything so I get off my phone and all. So I got to put that thing to use pretty soon.
That's great. Very cool.
Just real quick, from your perspective, I guess, how's the music scene been from your neck of the woods? I guess more so post-COVID.
I think once, it's interesting. Once the restrictions started to be lifted, um, people were just dying to get out and see stuff. Dying to be part of that tribal experience of seeing live music again. And we've had some venues reopen, other venues didn't reopen, and that's unfortunate. Um, there's been a lot more. It's interesting. It's been there's been a lot of in our area. There's a lot of tribute bands that keep coming through, and that's not unusual these days anymore. But um, it's interesting the following that these bands are getting, and I'm finding that there's a good deal of local bands that it's not unusual for them to crack 500-600 people a night just by you know their cover bands. But I think people are just so desperate to see live music, inexpensive live music. That's another big thing. The idea of going to a concert for a major artist these days, financially isn't feasible for a lot of people because I mean the ticket pricing and handling fees has gotten so out of whack. Um, it's not as easy to go to concerts like it used to be. But you see a tribute band for like a $5, $10 cover charge. Okay, I can live with that. But if you're going to spend 200, $500 on a concert ticket, I'm just like, it better be a damn fine concert if you're going to be investing that kind of cash into it. But locally, I mean, we've had some bands that emerged in the area over the years that have done really well. Stained is from the area. Shadows Falls, another one. The Size, um, a number of others. I know. Frank Black from the Pixies lives in the area. Lloyd Cole from Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, not too far away. Julianne Hatfield lives in Western Massachusetts now. There's a lot going on, and the hot spots still are like Northampton, Massachusetts, Amherst, Massachusetts, and then you have neighboring towns. New Haven's a great rock city. Boston, Providence. They're all great towns for live music.
So Kiss should change it to Boston Rock City instead. Going down to Boston Rock City.
Yeah, well, they could have, but I think Detroit just sounded better to them, for whatever reason.
Well, it does technically, but
Yeah.
Actually, my dad, he'll crank that as soon as the intro starts kicking in. He'll crank that baby up so loud on the radio. So,
well, Kiss was actually my first concert.
oh, was it?
1978. Again, 12 years old. The same year I got my first drum kit. My parents took me to see Kiss at the Providence Civic Center and the Love Gun tour, and I think my parents actually liked it more than I did. They just, at first, it was one of these things where people were so thrown off by Kiss in 1978. They thought they were satanic, and this heavy metal rock and roll stuff that warps the kids' minds and makes them Satanists and all this other bullshit. And then I think at one point there was like somebody called in like a threat, like there was going to be some sort of violence at this Kiss concert in Providence. And I remember my parents, having invested as much as $15 for the tickets, say, we're not spending this kind of money if there's going to be problems. If we got to leave, we're going to leave. And I'm like, okay, well, fine, let's just go see Kiss. And by the end of it, my mom is like, oh my gosh, the man that spit the blood and spit the fire, what a marvelous performer. I'm like, yes, he is. He is. And it was a great show. Great show. My parents loved it. It made them happy.
The whole Spitfire, the whole blood in the tongue of Gene Simmons, and all that stuff.
How did they walk on those big platform boots? And yet, they did.
They make it work. And then the grand finale of the ball, the Rising drum set at the end of Black Diamond.
So, yes, of course, with one of the world's most boring drum solos, but who cared by that point? All those pyrotechnics and explosions, that's all that mattered. That's all we cared about.
I mean, hey, it had nice little theatrics and all that sort of stuff with the pyrotechnics and all that stuff. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I forget what my dad's first one was, but actually he did see Rush and it was their first concert when they came down to the States.
Yeah,
It was actually in Pittsburgh.
that's
So,
cool.
but I think unfortunately the one that he's seen the most, quite by accident really, because he had no say in that matter, was seeing Ted Nugent a good number of times because he was always the opener. And he saw
Yeah,
Kiss. I think he saw Kiss 3 or 4 times. The recent
yep.
one was, I think it was actually before COVID had happened, and that was my first time seeing them live. Which at this point they're doing the Million Farewell Tour at this point.
Oh yeah, right.
So, but it's whatever. I saw Kiss. That counts for something.
That counts. That counts. It's the kind of band you need to see at least once in your life, twice if you're lucky.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mike, we're down to one more question on my podcast. I guess you did ask me a question earlier. So, I guess did you have any other questions for me you want to say? I guess do we have a little time? I don't know how your battery is on your phone.
My battery's out. My battery, it's hanging in there. It's hanging in there for now. I'll plug in when we're done. But I mean, I've noticed that most of the bands that you speak with are independent bands. Are those like regionally independent bands, or are they, or do you look for a wider scope than that?
If you say regionally, do you mean just like in the state, the PA, for instance, or you talk about all around the US of A?
Well, I mean, regional could be Pennsylvania, New York, East Coast, that kind of thing. I mean, where do you find that it's easier for you to? Where's the easiest source of guests for you?
It would either be the US or the UK, but I have branched out to other parts of the world.
Good.
So I had one from Greece, I had one from Hungary, and I got actually a few out of Australia, actually. So most of my interviewees have been US and a good bit from the UK.
I just did an interview with this guy, Derek Agrodny. He runs a record company. He's an American citizen, born in Chicago, but runs this record company out of Poland. And he does it because, I mean, this is the guy that brought MTV to Poland back, many, many years ago. But he runs this record company because out of Poland, because apparently the shipping rates out of Poland are some of the best in the world. Some of the cheapest ways of shipping stuff comes out of Poland. And that guy was actually really interesting, really fascinating guy. Heavy Medication Records was the name of the label, and yeah, out of Poland. So I'm zooming from Poland, but that was pretty cool.
They got a pretty good underground scene in terms of the metal world, though, too.
Yeah.
I don't know in terms of other genres, but I know metal's pretty big there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But he releases metal. He releases some punk bands. A lot of like American rootsy type of rockabilly type of stuff. Real cool stuff.
Also, can't forget Sweden, Germany, and one out of Finland there too, and
Yep.
Norway. I can't forget Norway. There's one out of Norway, so
They're all there. Good, awesome. That's
really,
cool.
actually, really, the process. If I see a band name, usually something that like catches my attention or something that piques my interest, it's pretty much sort of like tossing an imaginary coin up there and just say 50-50 at that point.
Yeah.
But I take a proactive approach, and then I just send them a message saying like, "Hey, this is me. I have this podcast. You want to come on chit chat?"
It's funny. It's funny how willing some people are. I mean, some people will say no a million times and you'll never get them, and that's fine. I mean, some of these guys have been interviewed a million times, but occasionally you'll run into somebody and say, "Yeah, I'm willing to do it. Yeah, no problem." I'm going, "Really? It was that simple? All I had to do was ask?" And then that's more often than not, that's how I get them, or through a publicist or a publisher or whatever. That's the other way of going about it. But I've had great. I mean, I'm been very satisfied with how I've been able to land them. And I was curious about how you were doing it, because I mean everyone does it a little bit differently.
I would say the most interesting, well, the one that was very quick. It says Bill Pollock on his Facebook page, but his band name is Billy Price. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I just threw a message out there because I've seen him live a few times. He's pretty much well known in the Pittsburgh here, but he also does his own little tours in and around the States here too. But it was pretty much like 2 minutes later, he just responded by like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, "Really? That was fast." I mean, you didn't waste any time at all. I thought this was going to be one of those things. I have to go to bed and wake up the next morning and see a message or not. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you. That's great.
all right.
Yeah.
Did you have any other questions or?
No, I think I'm flat out.
For now,
I think we've covered some ground here.
I think I'll have to get on your radio one of these days and maybe do the interview. You'll be the interview then. I'll be the interviewee.
There we go.
At some point.
Maybe we'll
So,
see. Maybe down the
but
road.
at some point. So, but if there's nothing else, here's how I'll frame the last question. Uh, Given the amount of negativity that you have seen in the world these days, you've seen a good amount of political polarization. This event happening in this part of the world, this event happening in this part of the world. It seems like a lot of people are losing a lot of hope these days, and perhaps they need sort of the right sort of advice here too. So, I guess what would be your message of hope? And I guess if you want to share any advice too for musicians, radio DJs too, or really anyone in particular, I guess what would it be?
Well, here's a good piece of advice for everybody, because I know we get divided, we get caught up in the politicking and the divisiveness of the world, and information and how we get it and who we want to believe and who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth, and some people get really overly involved in a lot of that. The thing that I try to keep in mind is everything is a temporary condition, and at some point you move on to the next thing. And I would say this, like, if you were depressed or out of work, or having a hard time in your life, everything is a temporary condition. And if you can take proactive steps to make sure that these things are temporary and not get bogged down in the negativity of all the stuff that's around you, then you have a pretty good chance of moving on to the next thing right away, or even quicker. And sometimes when we get set in our own ways, and you lock into a mindset, and you think, well, it can only be this way, and this is going to ruin things forever. 9 out of 10 times, the things that we're most anxious about never actually happen. So if you think about it, that this is going to be a temporary situation that will change, gives you a little bit of hope that that things are not going to be as awful as you might think they're going to be.
So things don't last forever, as they would say.
Things don't last forever. Things are constantly in motion and always changing, and not everything is permanent.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And spoke like a true prodigy.
What do you say?
He's like, I try. So
I do what I can.
That's for sure. All right. So, Mike, we have reached the end of my podcast right here. We talked a little over, I think, an hour and 20 some minutes right here too. But I guess before we close out, would you like to give any shout outs to anybody, or say maybe any final words of wisdom?
Baxi's Musical Podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, rock102.com, and the Rock 102 app. My guest this week is Stu Cook from Creedence Clearwater Revival, which is pretty cool. Next week, I haven't really mentioned this, but what the heck? Next week, my guest is Brian Baker from Bad Religion, Minor Threat. He's played with everybody. He's got a brand new book coming out. It's really very cool. And so he's my guest next week too. We got some other good ones coming up in the next couple of weeks, but those are the two we're working on right now.
Damn, son, I got competition now.
It's not competition. There's plenty of room in the pool for everybody.
Friendly competition. Let's say it that way. I do like a little friendly competition every now and again.
Okay, no problem.
All right. And I guess just real quick, I guess how can people hit you up? You on all the socials? And all
I'm on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Again, rock102.com. The Baxendale Daily Podcast gets posted every weekday. There's all kinds of ways to find me out there.
All right, sounds good. And we start with the beginning. Now we end up with a close. We do it like this. So, everyone, my guest today was Mike Baxendale, and from the lovely state of Massachusetts right there. A little change this time because we actually got a radio DJ for the first time in a while. If we want to declassify yourself as a radio DJ, we should say, or just radio head.
Whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, I'll answer to both.
He said radio, to say the least. But
yeah.
It's all part of his radio. He's got his own little music podcast, as he said, Baxi's Musical Podcast. He got some interesting guests coming on here pretty soon, so make sure you go check that stuff out. Also, a drummer here as well here too. So make sure you guys go hit him up on the socials and turn on the damn radio already. Listen to some tunes that this guy's got, as well as whatever he has next on his podcast too. So, Mike, Thank you again so much again for coming on here, mate. So you do stay safe. Rock on. And just last thing, I need a quick pose. Stay tuned, y'all.